What up, y'all? Appreciate you showing up, hanging out, listening to my dumb ass. Like and subscribe. So, Luke Stevens is a vanilla-ish kind of content creator. I don't know if you want to, call him that or whatever, but he's good. I like him. He's easy to listen to, easy to understand, usually makes sense. He's not a fanboy per se. He's vanilla. He's vanilla, which is a good thing. Sometimes you need some vanilla, you know what I'm saying? But I like him. He seems like if I met him in real life, he could be a friend, and that would be okay, Wouldn't be like, oh, he's coming over. Oh, no, Luke's coming over. Hide the fish. Or I don't know what you say. But anyway, so he went in. He reacted to another video. I guess it's a YouTuber named That Boy Aqua or something like that. And that video was critiquing Spider-Man 2's writing, basically. And he went in. And so we're gonna check it out. That's what we finna do. Let's go.
And That Boy Aqua put together a video outlining and exploring some of the stuff that went down with Spider-Man 2. Now, Spider-Man 2 is one of the weirder games that's launched in the last handful of years, if you are not familiar with it somehow. Basically, it was a game that cost $300 million.
Okay, so I have him on, I think, 1.25 speed, because this is a long video. There are some points I want to get to and kind of go through, so that's why he's talking so fast. He usually doesn't talk this fast, obviously. But yeah, $300-something million. A lot of the things that he says in this video, I don't hear any of the Donkey Unicorns, any of the ponies saying any of this. And this is why I listen to Luke Stevens. So let's keep it moving.
And was extremely, extremely expensive. And it was good. It was good. Like, it wasn't a bad game, but it's one of the most, and I mean this in the pure sense of the word, it's one of the most, like, unremarkable games I've played this generation.
Oh my gosh. And the thing is, remember, he's not an X-bot. He's not a pony. He's just a guy who talks about everything. He plays everything. He's a good content creator, right? A good is subjective, but you know what I'm saying? He's not offensive, let's just say that. And a lot of people like him. He has a giant following, blah, 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 whatever. But and he's trying to be nice. He's not like one of these guys gonna cuss and curse and blah, 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 and you stupid bots and all that stuff. No. He's just trying to he tried to put it nicely. That's funny.
Like, it just, there's not much to say about it. It's just kind of like, yep, I played it. Thought it was, like, pretty good. Mm-hmm. It was flashy. It was, pretty. Yep. Ran okay. Like, there's just not a lot to say. Yeah, Master says it was good enough. Yep, it's a game. It was very okay. That's the feeling I think a lot of people have. I think narratively it was a big swing and a miss, which is what this video is going to explore. I think they bit off more than they could chew in a lot of ways. They also had this weird obsession with Mary Jane. There was an interview from the game director where he specifically said that he wanted to make Mary Jane one of the heroes in this story, which I thought was kind of weird, because, like, Mary literally is not a superhero, and then, like, we're gonna, like, obsessively try to do it. And as we'll see, and if you play the game, that they found ways to try and kind of push her into being sort of a superhero. But I think they also bit off more than they could chew, just in the context and sense that they had Miles Morales and Peter Parker at the same time. So they literally have two super heroes, that share abilities and movement and traversal. And you have to try and give them roughly equal screen time and give them both arcs as characters and secondary casts that they're familiar with and that they're working with. And it just, like, they bit off more than they could chew, I think. And so it just came out, and it's largely been forgotten. Not many people talk about the game anymore, except sort of in this retro or this retrospective sense. And usually it's not to say really good things. I also insist, I think, that Spider-Man 2, if it had launched in 2024 or 2025, it would have been received very, very differently.
Like, what he's about to talk about is kind of an illustration of how PlayStation and Sony are not affected by any type of tax. Like, for instance, Dragon Age Veilguard, right? Everybody was like, oh my gosh, the writing was so bad. All these bunch of millennials. And he goes into this later. He goes, after the pandemic, these companies hired a lot of these like millennials. And you can tell by that. You can hear it in the writing. And it's like, I understand it may be relatable to the writer that's writing it for their peers, which are millennials or whatever. So they're talking about student loans and oh my gosh. And I don't know if they say anything about the housing market, but I'm just saying. But that was what game was that? That was that Saints Row? Was that I think that might have been the Saints Row, or anyway, it doesn't matter. But you know, that writing is not good, not because it's kind of trying to relate to a millennial's struggle, if you want to call it that, you know, how they're making their way through their current situation in the planet, in the world, but it's just bad because it's not good. It's like, there can be good you don't need to kind of pull in all of these social issues, like, oh my gosh, my student loans. That's the only one I can think of. But you know, it's just like they're overly trying to kind of sprinkle in some of their, not beliefs, but their ideologies, and it doesn't. It's like, no. First of all, we're playing a video game, a fantasy superhero game. We don't want to hear about any of that. We just want to play Spider-Man, and then they messed that up too. So, you know,
because it had some of the most cringe, god-awful writing, especially with some of its secondary characters, like the podcaster and all this stuff. It was unbelievably cringe. Bad. And they somehow managed to bypass the blowback for it.
Exactly.
If it had launched a year or two later, I think it would have been received much more negatively.
I don't think so. I disagree, because it's PlayStation. If it was Xbox, it would have got it straight away. But nah.
And I think they got really, really lucky with it. It's just my personal opinion.
No,
but let's see what that boy Aqua has to say.
There's no PlayStation
One
tax.
of the biggest criticisms of Spider-Man 2 since launch was that Peter Parker was nerfed. What does this mean? Well, it simply means that he was weaker and more incompetent in Spider-Man 2 compared to Spider-Man 1 and Miles Morales. Some moments like the infamous fridge scene have become a symbol of this nerf. But
which, if you're not familiar, if you didn't play it or if you forgot, basically there's like a major moment in the story where, not to be too specific for sake of spoilers, but Peter should be saving people or someone right now because he's Spider-Man. You know, a superhero who can like stop trains and punch holes in buildings. And in this scene, a refrigerator falls on him and he can't move. What? But it's very conveniently set up this way, as I'm sure he's going to describe. And it's very contrived. And this was my feeling, and it has been, I think, the feeling of many people, which is that for whatever reason, I think there's numerous reasons, but they needed Peter to kind of be second tier in this game, and so they wrote, I think poorly, excuses for him to not be involved in major moments because they needed Mary Jane to be the focus, they needed Miles to be the focus, or whatever else. So they come up with these very kind of smooth-brained excuses for why Peter can't help right now.
Smooth-brained. Maybe he's been listening to the Lords. I don't know. That's hilarious. So that's the thing, right? Spider-Man, right? If y'all don't know, Spider-Man is really strong. You may not think it because he's a kid or whatever, or he's a little guy. He's not like big like the Hulk and stuff. Spider-Man is, I'm not sure, how strong is he? The fact that he's a good guy, like if I think they actually, I think there's a comic that's happening now. I don't know what it's called because I haven't been catching it. I haven't been keeping up with it, but where Spider-Man actually fights Wolverine, and he fights Wolverine. Now that you're like, oh, Wolverine's gonna kill him real quick. No, the thing about Wolverine is like, Wolverine is strong, sure, of course. He's a mutant. He heals his healing factor. He's got the adamantium and stuff. But Spider-Man is so strong. I mean, remember in the movies, I mean, I don't know if there's a proper indicator, but it's an illustration of how strong he is. He's as strong as Captain America, or I would at least say the Winter Soldier. I think he's stronger than the Winter Soldier because remember, he caught his punch, the metal punch, the metal arm punch. Now, is that weaker? I don't know. Because, you know, Bucky has the same, well, he has a variant of the steroid juice that Cap took. So he's a super soldier. But my point is, Spider-Man's mad strong. Okay, like you say, stopping trains. You know, he's lifting all kinds of heavy stuff. He's very strong. And so when a fridge, that's not a heavy. I mean, fridges are heavy, sure, not really. It depends on how much you got in the fridge. If you got a jar of pickles in your fridge and a gallon of milk and that's it, it's not heavy. And fridges aren't inherently heavy. I mean, that looks like an old school fridge. It looks a little heavier. You know, might be, or maybe it's one of them new ones that kind of look old, but it's just an old styling, but it's new, so it's all aluminum and light. I'm just saying. Anyway, let's keep it moving because it's a long video.
And it's just dumb, but we'll continue. Literally, like, again, it's just so lazy where it's like, oh, he's now tired. And he now is laying down and doesn't have the strength to get up. Boom. It's just so lazy, you know. It's like you didn't even come up with a clever explanation. You didn't come up with some cool reason why he needed to sit out. It's just he's tired now. He's sleepy. Well, and I think this is why a lot of people kind of rebelled against Spider-Man 2 and got really, really pissy about it, because it took a character that they respected and appreciated and then nerfed the crap out of him to the point where they didn't respect him and they didn't appreciate him and they felt like he was being used as a punching bag to justify another character's arc. Which again just feels bad. It's the same emotional response people had to Joel's death, because it was like, you just killed off Joel so that Abby could have her character arc of like revenge bad, and so they feel like you disrespected the character they knew and loved in service of another character, you know.
I'm gonna skip through all these little things, because what Luke starts talking about The Last of Us, and he does, he kind of goes on a broader topic of how a lot of games that PlayStation produces are doing this, like have these kind of cop-out writing, basically, you know. So like in this Spider-Man 2, they have too much going on. Like he said, they bit off more than they can chew. They should have focused more on Spider-Man. And of course you're going to have Mary Jane in there, but she doesn't need to be a hero. But you know, Brian Antahar, he wanted to do it. He said, he doesn't give a F. And guess what? It was poor. It was poor writing. Like Luke says, lazy. It's goofy. A fridge. I mean, look. I know that Spider-Man is strong. So I would assume that a fridge wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, it knocked him over. It probably shouldn't have knocked him over. That's how strong he is. So I don't understand. Whatever, it does.
Peter, and he can't break out, even though he does that plenty in gameplay. I would say this is pretty unjustified and is done to make Sable seem like a threat. He also loses to her again later in the game.
It's the cringiest thing when like something happens in a cutscene, then in gameplay it's totally normal and fine. There's some exceptions where it's like you're introduced to a mini boss type class character, and the first time you see them, they're a main boss. You beat them, and then they become like a grunt enemy or a mini boss enemy later in the game. And it's like, okay, but you grew in power and capability, so what used to be a major challenge for you is now not that big of a deal. I can make an excuse out of that. I can like hand wave that away. But when it comes to this stuff where it's like literally in a cutscene, can't break free, I'm stuck, and then in a moment later in gameplay when grunts are using the same weapon, you can easily break out of it. It's just dumb. No consistency. That's the other thing, and that's part of why I say lazy, is that they aren't even trying to think through, does this make sense? Is this justified based on other stuff we've done? When he had that building collapse on him, was that too much, or was that something he could overcome? There's no attempt. It's just whatever, sure, sounds good. It's not about lazy, it's about philosophy and intent. It was extremely purposeful. Oh, I'm not saying it wasn't purposeful. I'm saying it is very purposeful. They want, in like for one sequence, they need Miles to unlock his extra powerful attacks. I'm blanking on what they're called, but you know, like the yellow electric whatever attacks. And so they need Peter to be incapacitated so he has a reason to unlock those, and they just are like, he's tired now, there you go. So it's purposeful. It's just really lazy. Like back when The Last of Us Part 1, for some reason I'm bringing up The Last of Us a lot today, but The Last of Us Part 1, Neil and the whole group of Naughty Dog designers and stuff that did press for The Last of Us before it launched, they said multiple times that Joel was the only playable character. They said multiple times, it's just Joel. Ellie is a side character. She's a sidekick, basically. You don't play as her.
That was such a... You see how they do? You see how Neil Druckmann does? You see how Sony does? Literally lying to your face. That's what they said. Oh, Joel. It's all about Joel. And then guess what? Joel gets can't. Was he get stabbed or something? He's sick for like a half an hour or something, and so Ellie has to be the one. It's ridiculous, man.
And then the game came out, and it turns out you can play as Ellie. And they decided that they wanted the player to play as Ellie to experience the world through her eyes. They decided intentionally, they wanted, and purposefully, that they wanted her to be a playable character, but they needed a reason for her to be playable, other than just like swap characters now for some reason. And what they did is they created a narrative reason where Joel becomes injured in a believable way and is incapacitated medically, so she needs to step up. Now, on the flip side, in that case, they needed Joel to then go and save Ellie, and so he makes a miraculous recovery in the span of like an hour and a half, taking some medicine, and he's totally fine after being impaled. That's also contrived in force for purposeful reasons. But my point is that you can do things purposefully in a story. I just want a little bit more effort than a fridge fell on him.
Lazy.
He's tired now. I want more effort than that. Like, at least try to justify it in the world. Try to justify it, you know, more than just the laziest of the laziest explanation.
You see that, like I said, this is why I listen to Luke, because he don't care. He's not kowtowing, and he's not scared of Sony. You know, he says a lot of bad things about a lot of games, and he doesn't get all the games because he says these things. But that's where he gets a little respect, because, you know, I've heard no one else except for, I guess, that this guy, the video, say or critique anything about PlayStation, anything about Spider-Man 2, anything about The Last of Us. I mean, you know, Luke is doing it now, but, you know, that's the point. It's like they're protected by the industry as a whole, and they reap the benefits. Meanwhile, Xbox is getting taxed left and right. They do one little thing. Oh my gosh, the world is ending. So I think that's about to change, but, you know, we'll see.
Peter loses once again against Venom. He's thrown through a wall and is knocked out for the entire night. I consider this, even if it is a minor infraction, an unjustified loss. And
again, it's just so lazy. It's like, he's tired now. He's sleepy. That's why he can't help now. It's just so lazy. It's so lazy. And when lazy writing, at least for me, maybe other people aren't like this, but for me, when there's really, really lazy writing like that, it just makes me check out. Like, I don't take it seriously anymore. I'm just like, is this what we're doing? Yep. Really? Yep. Okay. Sure. Like, I mentally check out. The fact that MJ jumped in front of him suggests that she has faster reaction times than Spider-Man, who has famously amazingly fast reaction times. So even if she did jump in front of him, I think he would have the reaction time to move her out of the way, to not let her take a slam from a giant alien, to make sure that she didn't take the slam of a giant alien creature straight to the dome. But, like, what are we doing? Like, again, it's just very, very, very contrived and stupid. And this is what's always so amazing to me, is that YouTubers are able to, off the dome, come up with objectively better ways of constructing these scenes, such that they don't have these massive plot holes. And it's not even what, like, the YouTuber does. The YouTuber doesn't write stories for games. The YouTuber isn't, like, just a dude making videos. But that is objectively better than what is in the game. By, like, every metric. It's just way better. And yet the writers, the professional writers, couldn't come up with a solution to it. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And I have to conclude that the writers are either they didn't see this as a problem, they thought it was badass, or, God forbid, they thought that this was like the badass version. That it's like, no, it's intense because the fridge hurts. Like, it's kindergarten writing. Like, what are we doing? I don't know how it happened, but it feels like, especially during this period, over the last, like, 5 years, there's been a significant drop in writing quality with a lot of these big AAA studios. Some people point to, like, SPI consultancy work and stuff. The people I've chatted with who work in game development on projects that SPI was involved in, they said that it was like their involvement was very, very minimal, and, like, they showed up, gave recommendations, and then nobody ever talked to them ever again. I don't know if that's the case for every one of these games that they worked on, because they did work on Spider-Man 2 or consult on it at least a little bit. I think more than anything, it just seems like there's a generation of writers that got hired right after COVID that are all terrible. They're just bad at what they do. Like, I don't know how else to conclude it. Like,
I mean, I don't think he's wrong. You look at a bunch of games that have come out, and they're bad. They're bad writing, and a lot of it's PlayStation. I heard. I think one of the writers that was on Dragon Age Veilguard, or I think it was Dragon Age Veilguard, got fired from there or left, whatever, and worked on Ghost of Yote. And he, it was funny. There's another video where he pulled out the red flag. It's like, if you're a writer, and the main problem with the previous game that you did was the writing, and you hire that person, and this was like a lead writer, you hire that person to work on your game, how's the writing gonna be? You know what I'm saying? So it was pretty funny.
Like, even if you're like, well, SBI was involved and they made recommendations that were terrible, it's still the writer's fault for taking their advice. Like, if you come in and you say, hey, we're going to redo The Last of Us Part 3, Joel is going to come back as a zombie, but he's going to come back as a zombie and it's going to be an allegory for Jesus. So he's going to come back as like raised from the dead, but then he's going to lead an army of enlightened infected, and they're going to retake the world, and he's going to create a tribulation. Like, you start describing this stuff and it's just insane. The writers would still have to say, yeah, that sounds good, let's do that. And so even if the consultant is making stupid recommendations, the writers are still responsible for taking the bad advice. You know, it's why you can't just excuse away like Suicide Squad being god awful with writing by saying, well, Sweet Baby worked on it. The writers still agreed to do that. So the people that worked at Rocksteady are still responsible ultimately.
Yep.
You know, you can't just wave your hands away. I'm saying the writers still said yes, even if it is ultimately SBI who came up with the idea. The writers are still bad for saying that sounds good.
Yep.
That sounds like a great idea.
That's right.
In the case of Spider-Man 2 though, like these little things, these individual scenes, that's not stuff that SBI worked on. They gave like character arc descriptions. They came up with like character designs. They came up with, yeah, we think we should work this character in this way. They should have these interests to appeal to these people. Like, that's what their consultancy groups work on. My understanding is that like individual scenes are still being written by the writers at Insomniac. I think the writers are just bad. Just bad.
Yeah, how come where the Ponies and Donkey Unicorns, huh? Where's the writing? Where's the critique on that? No, nothing. Silence. Silencio. And so now, my thing is, now we're going to be looking at Wolverine. How's the writing in Wolverine? Is it the same people writing it? Is Brian Antahar directing that? And there's another thing. They say it later in this video, but I might not even get to it. But one of the things that he pointed out, Luke, is that, you know, Brian Antahar, he directed the first one. He did not direct Miles Morales, and then he directed 2. And so, and he said it, Luke said it, and I agree. Well, I don't agree because I haven't played any of these games, but from what I've heard anecdotally, is that Miles Morales is kind of the best of the Spider-Man games, basically. It's like nice and compact, and there's like, people like it better. I don't know. They like it. They definitely like it better than the first one. Although it's more of the same, but it was refined, I guess. But I mean, I guess it does have to do with the direction, because you look at Spider-Man 2 and all the Mary Jane stuff and all the just contrived instances where Peter was nerfed as that boy Aqua describes so beautifully, that, you know, why, you know, it really is like Brian Antahar. I think his hubris and his not caring about what, I guess, or not taking into consideration that maybe his idea of good storytelling and good characters and motivation and all this stuff is not good. And, you know, the whole toxic positivity, you know, he talks about this later in the video as well, where, you know, he's, if Brian is all high on it, like, yo, this is the best, and then everybody's like, yeah, sure, yeah, Brian, you're good, yeah, you're the best, you know. It's just, you know, a bunch of yes men and women. You're not gonna get anywhere. You need somebody who's critiquing. It's like, that's kind of whack. That don't, wait, what? A fridge fell on a fridge fell on Spider-Man, and it knocked him down. Huh? I mean, he's strong, right? He can lift cars and stuff, right? So how is a refrigerator? That's like a pillow to him. How is him getting thrown up against the refrigerator, right? And you see, like, when he gets up, he just whips it out of the way. So it's like, first, it doesn't make sense. like physically, it doesn't make sense. Like, if you have a giant styrofoam sized block that is about the size of a refrigerator, right? And somebody throws you up against it and it falls on you, right? As far as you're strong enough to just be like, oh, what was this piece of paper on my back? That's what it should have been for Peter, because he's that strong. But no, and that's why it's kind of controversial. But the funny thing is, I had never heard of the fridge scene before this video. Why? Because Donkey Unicorns and Ponies and all these pundits and all these people who want to protect PlayStation, they want to PP, they don't want to point out the glaring issues with story, with just instances of idiocracy in the game. It's like, that doesn't make sense. It's like, imagine swapping out Spider-Man with the Hulk, and Venom's not as strong as the Hulk, but I'm just saying, Venom smacks the Hulk, and the Hulk flies back and hits the fridge and falls in front of him, and the fridge comes back down and hits him, and it knocks Hulk's head down to the floor because it's a regular fridge. Doesn't make sense, does it? Once again, Spider-Man may not look strong. He may not be a giant hulking Hulk, but he is very strong, and a fridge should not have been able to do. Although, let's just keep going.
And again, this is just the tale of the tape time and time again with Spider-Man 2 specifically, the game, is that you can tell they decided, we need this guy to be the hero of the scene, or we need MJ to be the hero, we need Miles to be the hero, whatever it may be. And then they come up with a way for it to happen, and they just force it. They don't even try to make it make sense. They don't even come up with some explanation for why Miles couldn't use some of his powers in that scene, why they wouldn't have these gadgets or this capability this way or that way. Because that doesn't work. Again, they don't need to. They feel like it's good enough. And that reflects the overall impression of Spider-Man 2, which is, again, that it was just good enough. No more, no less.
No. Good enough is what I described the PlayStation 4 Pro versus the Xbox One X. Xbox One X, way more powerful. It's just a better machine, period, right? There's no conversation about that. That's the facts, right? But the PlayStation 4 Pro was good enough to, I guess, compete or just stay in the periphery of the most powerful console. And so I've always said that, and Sony has been the just good enough company for a while. You know what I mean? Just look at their games, like God of War Ragnarok. It's good enough. Was it as good as 2018? A lot of people say no. I think there's also a narrative going around that every sequel that they have created, they have put out from their tentpole first-party games, has not been as good as the original game. Horizon Forbidden West, not as good as Horizon Zero Dawn. We're talking about Spider-Man 2 right now. Not as good as 1 or Miles Morales. I would say Miles Morales is the best. The just good enough kind of direction that PlayStation is going, I feel that it is starting to be reflected in their hardware. PlayStation 5 was cool, whatever. I mean, nobody's really complaining about it. I mean, it's big, and I don't think it was designed the best way. I think the Series X is definitely a better design. Even the Series S is a better design. It's small, compact, but it packs a punch. It's a little powerhouse, right? And the X is just with the two boards, the sister board and stuff. That's like, okay, I would have never thought of splitting the motherboard in half and just do it. That's kind of cool. And then that way you disperse the heat in a way, and then, okay, yeah, it makes sense. Excuse me. And then the Pistotech 5 Potato comes out. And I'm like, really? And now we're seeing that the Pistotech 5 Potato was truly a scam. Like people say, oh, this is a scam, that's a scam, Game Pass is a scam, but they just want to, try to apply the same kind of rhetoric to something on Xbox instead of looking at what PlayStation is doing. You look at their hardware. PlayStation 5 is this. Pistotech 5 Potato is it just good enough? It's actually kind of worse. It's like, for the price, it's not good enough. And so I feel that their effort in hardware has been lacking, and I'm gonna say, maybe it's controversial, but I'll take whatever y'all got to say. The Pistotech 5 Potato is a failure on many respects. One, it didn't sell, because if it did sell, they would be bragging about it. Two, performance-wise, hot trash garbage. Pisser Tech is the worst thing that I think Sony has come out with, except for, of course, Concord, the worst failure in history of video games. Never forget. And the price is ridiculous. And so those three things, it's like, you didn't even improve on the actual physical design of the system, which you had the opportunity to say, this is the Pro. We could re-engineer it. We could start over and make the design better. But no, they just double down and put a couple of lines in the middle and call it a day. I'm like, it's lazy, yes, and it doesn't help. It doesn't help anything. And I'm like, yo, it's so amazing to me that the Pisser Tech 5 Potato is just such a wet fart of a console. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. I am so glad I did not waste my money on that. I know I was listening to King the other day, and he was like, he's kind of disappointed because they're not developers. This is the same thing that happened with the Series S. Developers are not optimizing for the Pisser Tech 5 Potato because A, it's too much work. Remember when the Pisser Tech 5 Potato was coming out, I said the only way that this is gonna work is if Sony makes it so that the devs don't have to do anything. They just say, boom, click it, put it on the Pisser Tech 5, export, good to go. It does everything, automatic, upscaling, automatic, extra frames, all that stuff, right? That's how it had to work. It was not that. It was worse than that. You turn it on and everything broke. Your shadows are dancing in the trees. Like, what? How? Why is the flick? It's a flicker tech. That's what it is. It's new. It's flicker tech. It's very disappointing. But the first game is only 8 hours and 25 minutes. I mean, that's what this person played it. Of course, other people, if you go get all the knapsacks or whatever, sure it'll be longer. But I'm just saying, playing through the story, only 8 hours. Really?
Last 2 hours and 38 minutes is spent as a normal human. That means 65% of the game is spent as Spider-Man. Let's compare this to Spider-Man 2. For this game, we'll be counting gameplay as Miles as non-Spider-Man gameplay, because a lot of the sentiment that Peter was nerfed is heightened by people feeling like Miles was forced down their throat.
Yeah, and that's why I've also said that it does a disservice to Miles by doing it, where it's like, you could have given him his own game, a spin-off game, whatever. Like, you could have done your own thing there, but instead you try to cram all of it together. And like, if you really believe that MJ is just as badass as Spider-Man, why is there not an MJ game? It's because it wouldn't sell. It's because nobody would be interested in it, because she's not as cool as Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like, this is not rocket science, okay? Maybe that's problematic of me to say, but MJ is not as cool or fun or interesting as Spider-Man. That's why it's called Spider-Man and not MJ and the Adventures of Spider-Man. It's Spider-Man, okay? And whenever you start to try to cram all of this together, it just waters down the overall experience for everything, I agree you shouldn't discount Miles. My point is that by making Miles like you know what another good example is? Another good example? It's like AC Odyssey or AC Syndicate, to use those as examples, where the original vision was for Cassandra to be the only protagonist in AC Odyssey. And then it was, I forget his name, the one of the executives at Ubisoft. He was eventually fired and literally found guilty in a court of law for psychological abuse. It's like a whole thing. But that guy said, no, women don't sell, which is a wild thing to say. And he forced them to put in a dual protagonist thing of Alexios and Cassandra. And then they weave them into the story, so you run into the other one. If you choose one or the other, you eventually run into everything. And I think it pretty clearly did a disservice to Cassandra to have a secondary protagonist that wasn't needed. And it did a disservice to Alexios as well, because now he didn't get the same attention he would have gotten otherwise as a protagonist, because he was playing second fiddle to what was the real protagonist. It didn't actually help, at the end of the day, either character live up to their utmost potential. And in the case of Spider-Man and Miles Morales, as Spider-Man as well, doing like the dual protagonist thing, especially in the context of a video game where they share similar abilities, traversal, all of that, inevitably it just kind of waters down the experience for both characters. They end up just falling a bit more flat and not being as interesting as they would have otherwise been. I think if you had done Spider-Man 2 and it's a game focused on Peter Parker's Spider-Man, following the same storylines and everything as the first game, and then you give Miles Morales his own Spider-Man game, that distinguishes them, gives them the chance to be the center of their own stories, to have the entire game's arc focused on that character instead of trying to weave all this stuff together. That I think works way, way better than trying to cram it all into one package, you know?
Yeah, my thing is Miles Morales, right? Spider-Man Miles Morales, the game that they put out was like a 5-hour game or something like that. Why didn't they just make that a full game instead of making that a little bloop bloop and then slapping him into Spider-Man 2, right? Because like the sections that they had Miles in, they could have put that into Miles Morales or made it as long as that, and it would have been a full-fledged game. They could have charged whatever full price and all that good stuff. And it's just, I don't know, man. Maybe they said, oh, this black Puerto Rican dude's not gonna sell because he's the black Puerto Rican and people like the white boy Spider-Man instead of the black Puerto Rican Spider-Man. The Afro Rican Spider-Man don't just sell as much. Just like like Luke just said, the Ubisoft dude who's talking about the women don't sell, and they just mess up the game because of sexism. And in the Spider-Man thing, I am insinuating possibly that people were considering that his Afro ethnicity and Spanish would affect sales, meaning racism. Okay, I'm just saying, whatever. Moving on.
The entire story took me about 9 hours and 50 minutes. Of that time, 5 hours, just barely over half, was...
Bear in mind, again, this is a $300 million game. $300 million.
Yeah,
9 hours, 50 minutes of gameplay time.
Spent as Spider-Man.
That's exactly what I was saying. Like, the first one was 2 something, and the second one is 9 hours and 50... I'm like... you know what? I know a lot of the cost goes for the actors, the mocap. If you take out all the cinematic parts of the game, it's not going to be $300 million, But 9 hours and 50 minutes. How come nobody was saying anything about the length? The length was fine? No, the length was not fine, Dirt. No, it wasn't. I'm just saying, damn.
1 hour and 10 minutes was spent as Peter, 30 minutes was spent as Mary Jane, a surprisingly small amount of time, and 2 hours and 50 minutes was spent as Miles. This means that 52%, or otherwise half of the game, is spent playing as someone who is not Peter Parker's Spider-Man.
But I think that the fact that now when people think back to Spider-Man 2 and they think of the Mary Jane sequences and the walking around, riding a bicycle, they think of those sequences, I think that shows how significant those moments are. That they take up a disproportionate amount of like brain space and memory for the game, which is, I think, a big deal. Like when I think of The Witcher 3, I think, I'm genuinely interested in chat. Tell me, what do you think of? Like, what area of the map, what do you see in your mind's eye, when you think of The Witcher 3? Because I think of Skellige specifically. I think of exploring Skellige. I also have very clear and vivid memories of Toussaint and specifically the villa, and spending a lot of time doing upgrades and that type of thing. But that's what I think of.
Someone in the chat said exactly what I was thinking when he said, when you say, what do you think about The Witcher? What do you think of The Witcher 3 when, you think about it? And my thing is the Blood Baron right away, because I was like, that knocked my face off. I was like, what is, Okay, it was so good. I was like, and that's like a side story kind of thing. It's not like the main thing. I was like, man, this is crazy.
When I think of Spider-Man 2, I think of the weird ketchup and mustard Venom lady that MJ becomes, and I think of like these sequences stealthing as MJ, which I don't think was the goal. Bloody Baron. That's a good answer.
Bloody Baron. Yeah, that was a good answer.
The brothel. How dare you, 5390? How dare you, you sly dog. It's like, what do you think of when you think of GTA 5? The strip club. Instantly. Yep.
Yeah.
Instantly.
Yeah. I'm gonna be real though. GTA 6. What they've showed of the strip club, because I think they did show some of the strip club, or at least there's a girl on top of a car clapping, not with her hands, and I was like, wow, that's I don't know if that's real. Is that a cutscene or is that actual like how did they? I'm interested, so I'm going to visit a lot of places in GTA 6. I will. Yes.
The Miles Morales game took about 4 hours and 22 minutes to complete, with about 53 of those minutes being outside of the mask, and 3.5 hours under. That means 83% of the game is under the mask, the highest density of Spider-Manning so far. More interesting, however, is how...
And I really liked it. I think Miles Morales, especially as like a Christmas game themed around winter, it's genuinely pretty good. All the writing is lazy. That's why like we can say, as I think some people have mentioned, where it's like, it feels like they're nerfing him purposefully. And it's like, at certain moments, I think they are contriving storylines and they are weakening him so that another character can be lifted up in his place. I think that definitely does happen repeatedly across the board. But just in general, like they're not trying to come up with an excuse that makes sense. They're not really trying. The writing quality has just plummeted. Like the writers are just bad. They're just bad and they're lazy. And that's one thing, like there's contrived stories and those can still be compelling and interesting, but you just kind of ignore that part, shut that part of your brain off and just don't think about it. You can still have a good time though. But then there's other times where like the writers literally are not trying or they just are incapable of doing it. And you know, you look at the writing in Starfield where it's like, it really feels like you guys are just not capable of writing a story that's compelling in this way. It's just all so bland and boring. Bland and boring is bad, but contrived and stupid is a whole other animal. I don't know which is worse, frankly. It started with the idea of Spider-Man and Peter Parker's world colliding. That was the start of everything. He's also said some really, 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 really stupid stuff, like saying that MJ is just like, hold on, I want to get the quote right. I want to get the quote right.
I don't give a shit. She's fine. I don't care. I wanted her. I felt like it would be taking the easy way out if we didn't make her play. To the point where I said we're gonna do it. I don't care. We'll cut other stuff because I want to make sure that it's important to show her be a capable hero. That cuts off at the end. But yeah, he literally said, I don't care, we're gonna do it, we'll cut other stuff in a game that most people feel was lacking other stuff, and he's cutting stuff and changing stuff just to have MJ show up as a capable hero. And I'm sorry, she's in a game with two different Spider-Man. Like she's in a game with Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales. Like she's in a game with two different Spider-Man. She is not a capable hero on paper. Like maybe that makes me a bad person, but like I'm sorry, can she climb a wall? Can she shoot webs? Can she lift a refrigerator? Okay, so she's not, I get it, it's not all about strength, and what he'd probably say is, no, it's because you can be a hero even if you don't have superpowers. Okay, cool. But it's a Spider-Man game. Like, what are we doing? Okay, that makes me feel warm and fuzzy. That's great, but that's also very dumb. Okay, like, what are we doing? And I think that it's just like the obsession with trying to get her in the game and playable and show her as a capable hero. You can feel how some things start to feel really forced, where he's saying, I don't care if it doesn't make sense. I don't care what the excuse is. We're going to do it.
I think that sentiment is part of the problem in certain aspects of, I don't want to say technology, but certain companies. I think Apple said it, and I think a lot of people listen to, I think Steve Jobs said it at one point, and he said, people don't know what they want until we show them what they want. So I'm paraphrasing, but it's basically, you know, we're going to create something that you want, but you're not going to know that you want it until we make it, and then it's going to be cool, and you're going to be like, oh, that's cool, and then, right? And I think that kind of thinking is what is happening with Brian Antahar. And I think he used to be on I think it was One Up Yours or something. He was on a podcast before. Him and Luke Smith and, you know, all of them went on to make games. I mean, Luke Smith doesn't have a job anymore. He got fired from Bungie, but I don't know how long Brian has, because his work is starting to dwindle, because he's going to sit there on a interview and say he doesn't give a shite because he wanted to make Mary Jane a hero. And no one thought that was a good idea except for him, I guess. Or, you know, the Yes Men, of course, they agreed. But people who played the game would disagree. And they would say, you could have took that out and put some more Miles or even more Peter or Venom. Anything else would have been better than that. She doesn't need to be. It's like, I agree with what Luke just said. They're trying to contrive a way to make her a hero, and if you look at the movies, you look at, I mean, I have some Spider-Man comics OG from a little bit before 300, when 300 hit, a little bit after 300, then I stopped, and then McFarlane did his run, and I stopped. But And I have the Craven the Hunter when he went against when Craven killed Spider-Man and then came back. Black suit. Whatever. The point is that in those books, you know, Mary Jane, she's there. She's she's beautiful. She's way over. She's way over the pay grade of Pete. Pete is a goofy little science nerd who pulled a supermodel. That's the relationship. So she's like, all right, Tiger, and he's like, I can't believe I got Mary Jane Watson. She's the finest model in New York, son. I got her. How? I'm not gonna ask why, because I'm just gonna be thankful that I have a real hot, super hot, ginger, hot model, ginger girl, redhead. Right? That's what it was. That's what it is. But now, you know, they were talking about, like, I mean, it's really the writers, and it's not the DEI stuff, right? Like you said, the writers have the last say. The writers are writing the story. The writers are writing the games. DEI says, yo, maybe you should do this. Maybe you should do that. The writers can say yeah or nay. They can say, yeah, no, meh. So obviously they were on the same page or whatever, and they did all this stuff with Mary Jane. I mean, there's another, I saw a part, it's not in this video, but I saw a part where Mary Jane was Mary Venom. I don't know what she's called. He calls it ketchup and mustard venom. And she was fighting with Pete, with Spider-Man. And the writing was so bad. I'm not gonna find the clip, but she was like complaining about something. I'm just like, and then Pete's like, I know I should be a better boyfriend, or I forgot. I was like, huh? Okay, all right. This is goofy. This is just like, it just sounded like bad. It's like if you had like one of them low budget sci-fi movies on the Sci-Fi Channel. That's what it felt like. I was like, this is not. I don't know who wrote that part. I don't know.
I could have just waited.
The MJ missions. Where do I begin? I heard all the feedback, and I will tell you, I felt like it was a cop-out if we didn't have them.
Yeah.
I felt like we were saying, okay, yep, everybody just wants to see Spider-Man and whatever. Like, who cares about the...
It's a Spider-Man game. It's a Spider-Man game.
It's a Spider-Man
what are we doing crossing
game.
our arms and pouting? Like, bro, it's a Spider-Man game.
Yep.
And your audience and fans say they thought that the MJ sequences felt out of place.
Yep.
They were boring.
Yep.
It's a Spider-Man game.
Yep.
Why are we playing as MJ?
Exactly.
What are we doing?
Yep.
It's this like contempt for the audience that is so representative of the last like 5 years of some of these like biggest flops in the industry. And it's why, again, like I said at the top of the video, I think if Spider-Man 2 had launched a year or two later in the age of like 2024, early 2025, for example, I think it would have been crucified for some of the writing choices and what they've done with it. It still probably would have sold pretty well because it's Spider-Man, but I think that it would have gotten a lot more blowback than it did at the time. And I'm sorry, it's just this weird contemptuous vibe of like, no, you guys, what you want is a cop out. What you want, you don't understand. It's talking down to, it's just, it feels gross.
And I said, no, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna look at the criticisms and see what we can do right. And I think that it was really important to show that she is a capable hero in her own way.
For sure.
Give people the stuff you know they want, so you can inject things that maybe they aren't familiar with or maybe they don't know they want, but make them like that stuff.
To be clear.
No, that's not how it works. You can't make them like something that they don't like. It's like, I don't like olives. I'm there with you, C-Money. I don't like olives. I like mustard though. I don't like olives. So, and then he's like, oh, don't worry, I got this best. I'm making this sandwich. It's so delicious. It's got like all the meats and all the cheeses and stuff. It's so delicious. And then I'm gonna sneak some olives in there, and then I'm gonna make you like them, cause you're gonna think that the olives is not, and I'm not gonna tell you they're in there, but and then you're gonna eat it and you're gonna like it because everything else is so good that it makes the olives delicious too. It's like, no, that's not how me not liking olives works. When I don't like olives, that means I don't like the taste of olives. So when you put the taste of olives into all the goodness, it makes the goodness bad. It infects the goodness, and then now the cheeses and the meats and the delicious stuff over there is gross because you put olive grossness on it, and that's what they're doing. They're putting MJ mission grossness inside of my Spider-Man, my delicious Spider-Man, is now disgusting because of MJ. Maybe that's not the best analogy, but you know what I'm saying.
There, as he says on screen for those listening, this quote is in reference to Mr. Negative, but many people believe it to be indicative of the MJ missions too, because it has to do with his design philosophy. Just to let him read it off again, this is the methodology and the mindset of a lot of these guys. Just listen again.
Own way, for sure. Give people stuff you know they want, so you can inject things that maybe they aren't familiar with, or maybe they don't know they want, but make them like that stuff.
It's hard to...
This like manipulative... You don't like the MJ stuff? Okay, well, you're gonna. You don't like the MJ missions? You think they're boring and out of place in a game called Spider-Man?
So
okay.
bad.
Okay, well, you're gonna. We're gonna put it in the game. Yes, you'll play as Spider-Man. You'll swing around. You'll punch bad guys. And we'll even give you a second Spider-Man. You can 2 Spider-Man fighting crime, doing great things. And we're gonna put MJ sequences in there, and you're gonna like it. It's that, again, contempt. It's just gross to me. It's manipulative. It's like, no, we're gonna sneak it in there. And it's literally... it's literally you order a smoothie and they sneak kale into it and they grind it up and like you can't even really tell. It's like it tastes like I licked the ass cheek of an elephant. I can tell there's kale in my smoothie. I wanted a good smoothie that tastes good. I didn't want you to shove whatever the hell this is into it, you know?
I think his smoothie kale was a little bit better than my olive sandwich analogy, but you get the picture. But I think what's happening too is, I think he goes into it, but that kind of thinking that Brian Antahar had doing Spider-Man 2, injecting these missions that nobody really wanted and trying to force people to like them and not really, I guess, respecting the sentiment of the audience, just like not giving an F and just like whatever. I'm gonna do it my way. I'm the director or whatever he was thinking, and it's like they don't care about their audience. The fact that it's Spider-Man is what saved the game, because any other game they would have destroyed this. Like, what is this? How? You're supposed to be really strong, and then I don't get it. Whatever. It's dumb. But I think the way that he's talking, Brian Antahar, is goes across. I think Neil Druckmann has the same kind of issues with how he makes games and how he writes and how he does his characters and the contrived nature of some of the scenarios and situations. I mean, I would say Neil's probably better. He's probably a better writer than Brian, but I think they're from the same cloth, if you will.
But I still think this is indicative of how he directs, and Spider-Man Miles Morales supports this. That game had the least amount of screen time featuring a character outside of the suit, and conveniently, Antahar didn't direct that one. Now, I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, because eventually this will just turn into a story critique, and I don't want this to seem like I'm hating.
There's a saying, never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by incompetence, and I think that is largely a good saying to bear in mind with a lot of these discussions, because what is an easier explanation for, like, the fridge scene that Peter gets knocked down by a refrigerator and like lets MJ jump in front of him to take the blow of an alien? What's better? Like, what makes more sense? That it was this like calculated thing with like, yeah, and then we're gonna have him get squished by the refrigerator as like a humiliation thing to say that like MJ took that hit and was still awake and fine, but Peter gets knocked to the ground by a fridge falling on him. How stupid is that? Screw him. Like, I don't think that's it. I think they just like we're lazy writers and we're like, I don't know, she gets hit, he slams into the fridge and it like falls on him, and then he like throws it up and gets up and goes, don't, and then she shows up as ketchup alien, and I really think that's it. There's like no second pass on the story. There's been a lot of discussion in the last few years over like a culture of toxic positivity, for example, in the writer's room.
There it is.
I think that is just as significant of an explanation, or just as valid an explanation of a lot of this stuff, because it feels like with many of these stories that have god-awful writing, it feels like, did nobody check this? Did nobody go over this again? Did nobody go back and look at this and ask, is this the best we can do? And I think it's because like genuinely nobody did.
Nope.
I think it genuinely is that. Does it ultimately matter at the end of the day? Not really. Either way, at the end of the day, the stories are still stupid.
Oh, wow.
So there's that. But I hope that they take the feedback from Spider-Man 2 and listen to it and can grow from it. Because once, like, imagine you worked as a writer on like Dragon Age and everybody knows the writing was the weakest part of that game. The writing is why that failed. The writing is this or that. Everybody knows the writing was the problem. And then you come in looking for a job, and on your resume you say writer for that game that failed because of the writing. Not many companies are going to want to hire you. Like some maybe will.
Yeah.
But not a lot of
Sucker Punch.
them will. EGS will.
Ah, you bastard.
They did hire one guy.
The moral of the story is that Donkey Unicorns and Ponies fans of the PlayStation will not critically look at these games because it's Spider-Man. Oh, it's great. I'm gonna overlook all the bad stuff. And the thing is like on its surface, it's a Spider-Man game. You could be like, I hated that part of the game. I hated this part of the game. Blah blah blah. Right? But what made it worse was Brian Antahar coming out and saying the things that he said, saying it the way that he said it. I guess he thought he was a rock star and he could talk however he wants and stuff, but it looks like hubris. It looks like he doesn't care. He literally said it in a way that makes us believe, the viewers, that he doesn't care about what we say, about how we feel, even though we are the customers. So he's just going to do what he wants. He doesn't give a shite, quote unquote. So whatever, that's kind of the state of gaming in general. I would say part of gaming in general. Some of the writers and some of the directors and creators are like Brian, are like Neil. Some aren't. There are still good writers out there. You just gotta hope that your team hires them. And it looks like PlayStation is not hiring the right people right now. But we'll see. We'll see what Wolverine looks like. We'll see what Spider-Man 3 Part 1 and Part 2 look like. We'll see. I mean, I don't, unless they have that other Brian do Wolverine, which would be cool. I hope Brian Antahar doesn't do it because he'll probably have, I don't, who would be in Wolverine who doesn't have powers. I don't even, no, she died. I'm trying to think. I don't even know when this takes place. Did they say it was like the 70s or something, or the 80s? Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm sorry. But anyway, let me know in the comments below what you think about Luke Stevens going in, slap, 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 smack, 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 talking shit about all these whack writers over on the PlayStation side, and in general in the industry. He makes fun of Bethesda a little bit because of Starfield. Sure, it was boring, but it wasn't contrived. And he said it himself. He doesn't know what's worse. But anyway, I appreciate, and I'll talk to you on the next one. Tweet.